The forest east of Hurtgen seemed to breathe with the soldiers. Tall pines stood like pillars of a cathedral, their needles muffling sound so thoroughly that even a squad of armed men could vanish among them. At dawn, a thin mist drifted through the trunks, carrying the scent of wet earth, rotting foliage, and the faint acrid memory of spent artillery. For the American 28th Infantry Division, it was another day advancing into ground they neither trusted nor understood. Private Ethan Cole moved cautiously at the front of the reconnaissance patrol. A quiet, sharp-eyed farm boy from Virginia, Ethan had earned a reputation for seeing things before others did. Tracks, broken twigs, glints of metal buried under leaves. This morning he wished he didn't see quite so well. The silence was too perfect. No birds. No distant clatter of German positions shifting. Only the steady exhale of 9 men trying to look fearless. Lieutenant Mark Halpern, the patrol leader, raised his hand, halting the group. He crouched beside Ethan, whispering, "Something off?" Ethan nodded. "Forest's wrong today. Feels like it's waiting." Halpern allowed himself a bitter smile. "Everything here feels like it's waiting." A cold wind passed between them, rattling branches. The men adjusted their grips on their rifles. They were deep in German territory now, probing a region rumored to be laced with mines and booby traps, yet nothing had gone off. No tripwire, no pressure plate, no telltale click. It didn't reassure anyone. It unnerved them instead. A few hundred yards ahead, Corporal Jennings examined the soil. "Tracks," he murmured. "Light. Could be a courier route. Germans might still be using this trail." Halpern signaled for the patrol to follow the narrow deer path that wound deeper into the forest. The group advanced, spacing out, boots sinking softly into layers of moist pine needles that hid the ground from view. It felt like walking over secrets. Ethan's eyes caught something half buried beneath a spray of needles, a faint rectangle of disturbed earth. But when he brushed the leaves aside, he found only a broken branch and a patch of soft moss. No metal. No casing. Nothing that resembled danger. Still, the hairs on his arms stood upright. "False alarm?" Halpern asked. "Maybe," Ethan replied. But the forest's silence pressed in harder, as if swallowing their words before they could echo. Behind them, one of the scouts muttered, "Feels like the Krauts are watching." No one disagreed. The patrol continued through the misty undergrowth, unaware that beneath their very feet, hidden under a sheet of damp leaves and an innocent wooden casing, lay one of Germany's most deceptive weapons. A device engineered not to be found, not to be heard, and never to be survived. And by midday, it would fulfill its purpose. The deeper the patrol moved into the forest, the thicker the undergrowth became. Gnarled roots twisted out of the ground like skeletal fingers, and fallen branches forced the men to navigate with deliberate care. Even so, none of them suspected they were treading near a weapon designed specifically for forests like this one. A mine nearly invisible to Allied detectors because it contained no metal. Hours earlier, on the German side of the line, Oberstfreiter Karl Brenner had knelt in this very section of woods, pressing the final layer of pine needles over a small wooden box. Brenner was not cruel by nature. He preferred the quiet work, mines, traps, devices that required patience. But today's assignment bothered him. Command insisted that these wooden Schützenmine 42 be placed along the likely American scouting routes. They were cheap, silent, and devastatingly effective. Brenner wiped the dirt from his hands and glanced around. "This forest eats sound," he muttered to his companion Dieter Lang. Lang grunted. "Better for us. Worse for them." Brenner didn't answer. He assembled each mine with unsettling care, 2 wooden slats forming a pressure top, the small detonator inside made mostly of glass and resin. No metallic signature. Nothing a standard American mine detector could detect. To the eye, it was simply another wooden object blending with a world made of wood. Back in the present, Ethan Cole paused again. Something about the ground ahead felt wrong. Not visibly wrong. He saw only a soft mound of earth and a scattering of fresh needles, normal for a forest after heavy winds. But the placement was too neat, too symmetrical. As if the forest floor had been coned. Halpern approached. "Talk to me." Ethan knelt, brushing the ground lightly with the tip of his glove. No metal ping. No glint. Just the same quiet earth. Someone's been here. Recently. Before Halpern could answer, a sudden series of cracks echoed faintly in the distance. Maybe branches, maybe gunfire swallowed by the woods. The patrol lowered themselves instinctively, scanning their surroundings. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed but them. Advance slowly, Halpern ordered. The men proceeded one by one, stepping cautiously along the narrow track. Jennings took point now, lifting his boots carefully, almost ceremonially. Ethan followed, eyes darting across every shadow. But the danger did not look like danger. The wooden casing lay beneath a deceptive layer of soft needles, blending perfectly with the terrain. Jennings' foot hovered inches above it. No time for warning, no time for anyone to shout. A dull thump rolled through the earth like a heartbeat. No sound cracked the air. No fiery plume rose. Instead, a muted burst of splintered wood and shrapnel erupted upward, silent as breath, shredding through the stillness and into Jennings' legs. The forest did not echo. It simply absorbed the impact. Jennings fell without a scream, as though swallowed by the ground. The silence after was somehow worse. For a moment none of the men could move. The silence that followed the blast was so complete that Ethan wondered if he had gone deaf. There was no ringing, no echo, no panicked shouting, only the hollow absence of sound, as though the forest had swallowed not just noise but breath itself. Jennings lay sprawled across the pine needles, his legs mangled by splinters of wood and fragments of the mine's casing. No smoke drifted upward. No crater marked the detonation. Only the sickening stillness of a man broken by something that did not even announce itself. Lieutenant Halpern was the first to act. He lunged forward, dragging Jennings back by his webbing, shouting for a medic even though his voice barely rose above a whisper. The men looked around frantically, expecting a follow-up explosion, gunfire, or movement in the trees. But nothing came. The forest, ancient and indifferent, simply watched. Ethan knelt beside Jennings, pressing a trembling hand to the corporal's chest. Jennings' breaths came shallow, urgent, and terrified. His eyes darted wildly. What was it?" he gasped. "A mine," Ethan answered. Silent, wooden. The word tasted wrong in his mouth. Mines were supposed to be metal, detectable, things a man might survive if he was lucky. But this? This was a trap built to erase the warning signs. The medic, Carter, dropped beside them, cursing as he inspected the wounds. "There's barely any shrapnel," he muttered. "Mostly wood. Damn thing shredded him like a sawmill." Halpern scanned the path ahead. "Everyone hold position. Nobody moves until we probe this entire area." But that was easier said than done. The forest floor was an unbroken sea of needles, roots, and fallen branches, all of it hiding what could be dozens more wooden mines. Their detectors would be useless. Every step would be a gamble. Ethan's hands shook as he used the tip of his knife to brush aside needles near Jennings' feet, searching for anything that might give a clue to the placement of the device. He found a fragment of wood the size of a coin, its grain scorched. Beside it, a twisted sliver of resin. No metal. Nothing that would betray its presence before it struck. Jennings grabbed Ethan's sleeve. "Don't let them leave me," he whispered. Ethan swallowed hard. "We're not leaving anyone." Carter worked with grim focus, packing bandages and morphine. But one look passed between him and Halpern told the truth. Jennings had minutes, maybe less. A rustling noise drifted through the trees. The men raised their rifles instantly, nerves stretched to breaking point. But it was only the wind sliding through branches, carrying the distant creak of trees shifting under their own weight. Halpern knelt beside Jennings. "You held the line. You did your job. We've got you." His voice broke despite his effort. Jennings' breath rattled once, then faded. His eyes fixed on nothing. The forest reclaimed its silence. Halpern stood slowly, jaw tight. "They want us afraid," he said. "They want us frozen. But we move. Carefully. Together." Ethan stared at the ground where Jennings had stepped. A simple patch of needles, indistinguishable from the rest, yet deadly. The forest had given its answer. And it was merciless. They advanced inch by inch, probing the ground with bayonets and sticks, clearing barely a yard at a time. Hours passed under the oppressive quiet, the men drenched in cold sweat despite the winter air. The forest seemed to shift around them, every shadow hinting at hidden traps, every patch of earth a potential death sentence. The patrol's world shrank to the space directly before their boots. No one spoke unless necessary. Fear had become a physical weight they carried as real as their rifles. The loss of Jennings lingered behind them like a ghost. Ethan moved near Halpern, scanning the woods for signs of enemy movement. But whoever had laid the mines was long gone, or watching from a distance, waiting for panic to finish what the explosives began. Ethan imagined German eyes studying them from behind the trees, tracking their halting progress. The thought made his skin crawl. "Look for patterns," Ethan murmured to Halpern. "Mines are placed with intent. Brenner, whoever he is, he wouldn't scatter them randomly. He'd make a kill channel. A direction to hurt us." Halpern nodded grimly. "So we find the gaps. The safe lane." It was a maddening puzzle. Wooden mines, camouflaged with forest debris, planted in a region where every bit of ground looked identical. But Ethan noticed subtle hints, slightly disturbed patches of moss, needles arranged just a bit too evenly, footprints too fresh to be from wind-blown debris. Slowly, painfully, a path revealed itself. Behind them, Carter whispered, "Feels like we're walking through ghosts." "Not ghosts," Ethan said. "Men who wanted us dead but didn't want to risk a firefight." The deeper they went, the more evidence they found: boot impressions, a cigarette stub smashed into the dirt, the faint scent of oil on wood. Signs of German engineers moving with purpose. But the forest suddenly shifted again. A faint metallic click echoed through the trees, followed by a distant voice barking orders in German. "Contact," one of the scouts whispered. Ethan shook his head. "Too far. And if they wanted a firefight, they'd have opened already." Halpern motioned the group forward. "We push through the sector. If there's a nest placing these mines, we're close." The path narrowed between dense clusters of pine. Ethan led, probing each step, sweat freezing on his brow. He stopped suddenly. Ahead lay a clearing, small, maybe 15 yards across, covered in a natural carpet of pine needles. And at the center, a shallow pit. Freshly dug. A staging point. A mine depot. Ethan raised a fist. The patrol halted. In the fog at the edge of the clearing, two shapes materialized, German sappers carrying wooden boxes. For a moment the two sides stared at each other in stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. The first shot came from Halpern. The crack shattered the unnatural quiet, ripping open the tension that had suffocated them for hours. One of the German sappers fell instantly, dropping the wooden crate he carried. The second man dove behind a fallen log, shouting in panic. The Americans scrambled for cover, firing controlled bursts into the clearing. The forest, so silent for so long, erupted into a brief but furious battle, with splintering bullets whipping through the mist, the sharp grunt of men fighting at close quarters. Ethan flanked left, darting behind a cluster of trees, his heartbeat pounding loud enough to drown out everything else. He could see the surviving sapper crawling toward the pit, dragging something with him. A box. Another mine. Halpern shouted, "He's trying to set it off. Take him down." Ethan steadied his rifle, exhaled, and fired. The sapper jerked, collapsed, and lay still. The wooden box tumbled from his grasp, sliding across the needles until it came to rest at Ethan's feet. For a long moment, no one moved. The clearing fell quiet again, but this time the silence carried the echo of violence, the forest unable to swallow it completely. Carter and two scouts secured the perimeter while Halpern approached the pit. Inside were at least a dozen more wooden mines, carefully arranged, ready to be deployed along the routes the Americans would inevitably scout. Tools lay scattered beside them. Measuring strings, gloves, a small brush for covering the devices. A methodical workspace. A hunter's den. Halpern's jaw tightened. This is the source. These bastards planned to seed the whole forest. Ethan picked up the fallen box carefully, studying it. The design was simple but deadly, thin wooden slats forming a pressure surface, a small cavity for the detonator, and resin compartments where metal would normally sit. Nearly invisible. Nearly undetectable. Built to maim, not for strategy but for cruelty wrapped in efficiency. He set the box down. They built these so the forest would do the killing for them. Halpern placed a hand on his shoulder. And we walked right into it. The men began collecting anything of intelligence value. A small notebook covered in mud revealed handwritten notes, deployment patterns, preferred ambush trails, and a map of the sector with several red X's. Some X's were behind them. Some lay ahead. "This whole place is a minefield," Carter muttered. "Not anymore," Halpern replied. "We mark it. We warn the rest. And we get out alive." Before leaving, Ethan walked to the spot where Jennings had fallen earlier that day. He knelt, placing a pine branch gently on the ground, a quiet tribute in a quiet forest. War was full of noise, chaos, and fury. But here, among the whispering trees, the dead were claimed by silence. Wooden silence. As the patrol withdrew, carefully following the safe lane they had carved, Ethan cast one last look at the clearing and the pit of mines. It struck him that wars were not defined only by great battles or roaring machines. Sometimes they were shaped by small hidden things, things carved from wood, buried under needles, waiting patiently in the dark. And somewhere deeper in Germany more boxes were being built. More silent killers. The forest would not be quiet for long.